college. We want to do it on account, Phyllis. How do you want to handle it?
Why don't you all stand behind us where you can get in the picture?
That's probably the main.
Yeah, all that is better. They won't look at
Yeah, you're welcome.
Here, buddy. John?
The light shines off my head, President.
We do guys with you. Take it up slowly, please. President, Orange, stand back there one more time. We'll see you on another shot.
How did it feel in there?
Hope so.
Norman Taft didn't always have film, John.
Mrs. Edwards, would you come up, please? Thank you, President.
All right, Steve, thank you. I want to pay the
Two sides. It'll be on both. This lady who's helping President Eaglin unveil this marker, this is Mrs. Frances Edwards from Lexington, and she is a descendant of one of the original faculty members, Ruby Van Sant, whose name is on the marker and on Van Sant Hall, of course, over in Lakewood Terrace. We're pleased that you can be here, ma'am. Thank you very much. Are we ready? You can take it up slowly from the bottom, please.
Those were the
Okay, now.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, we were talking. We like this color better than the state markers, you know, which are black.
Daughter is my aunt.
So she has ties to two of them.
Charles Dickens
I like the Dickens.
made up his mind.
Are you related?
Well, now, where are they going to hang?
That's what.
On post outside.
It's up through Dr. Dorn.
Wow.
I noticed that in the memory room.
And they came back one day for Morris Norfolk.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
Well,
Anything we need?
now we're going to bury a capsule. What about
We're going to put this one in the Plaza area up in the library area, in the second phase permanently. It'll be pole mounted. This.
Where's Carol?
I don't know. She's probably up in the office.
Good morning. My name is Randy
up there.
Lillard,
She's
President of
looking
the
at
Student
it.
Alumni Ambassadors. On behalf of the Student Alumni Ambassadors, I would like to welcome each of you here this morning. The Student Alumni Ambassadors serve as a link between the students and alumni at Morehead State University. The ambassadors wanted to be a part in the 75th anniversary of MSU. In order to become more involved, we decided to develop a time capsule. As we expected, this endeavor has been well worth the time and effort it has taken to get where we are today. At this point, I would like to turn the time capsule dedication over to Molly Caldwell, my co-chair for this project.
Good morning. The purpose of this time capsule is to capture a piece of MSU today for future students, faculty, staff, and alumni. The opening of the time capsule in the year 2022 will give participants in the 100th anniversary festivities an opportunity to see what life at Morehead State was like in 1998. We believe that the contents within, catalogs, pictures, items from student organizations, and administrative materials, just to name a few, accurately depict the university throughout the year of the 75th anniversary celebration. If you have received a gold handout, you can see a complete inventory of the items which were collected and sealed into the time capsule to commemorate 75 years of success at Morehead State University. I also invite you to take a look at the photograph in front of me. This picture is a collage of the many items concealed in the time capsule. At this time, I would like to take the opportunity to thank everyone involved in this project. Thank you to the Founders Day Committee for making sure we had a place in the day's events. Thank you to Bill Redwine and Tammy Jones for keeping us on track. And thank you to the rest of the staff at the Alumni Center. Thank you to the SAA members who helped to collect the items which are in the time capsule from the various offices on campus. I would also like to thank the administrators, faculty, the staff, and the student organizations which contributed items and ideas for the time capsule. A special thanks to Tim Holbrook, the wonderful photographer who created the picture collage of the items, and a very special thanks to Mr. Robert Hayes. Mr. Hayes is the chair of the Industrial Education and Technology Department. He is responsible for the creation of the time capsule. His assistance and advice was essential in preparing to preserve the items for the next 25 years. Again, this has been a very rewarding venture, and I plan to be here for its unveiling in 2022, as I hope many of you will be. I would like to conclude with thanking the Founders Day Committee and the Alumni Relations and Development Office for allowing and encouraging the student alumni ambassadors to contribute to the rich heritage and bright future of Morehead State University. At this time, Randy Lillard and Bill Redwine will place a time capsule in the ground. The time capsule marker inscription will read, 75th Anniversary Time Capsule, placed here on April 3rd, 1998 by the Student Alumni Ambassadors, to be opened on Founders Day in the year 2022. Thank you for all your help.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have announced that the dedication ceremony will start at 10:30, so those of you who are standing may want to find a seat, and we will start promptly in 7 minutes. I'm pleased to welcome you to this dedication ceremony for the Memorial Plaza. Today we will remember the noble service of 138 of our own departed colleagues who gave a total of 2,772 years to this institution. Hopefully not very soon, but in the future, obviously there will be hundreds more who will be honored in future years as this project grows. I'm going to move away from my prepared notes before I introduce the person who will be the Master of Ceremonies, if you will, for this event. One of the issues that I faced when I came here was noting that we had such a wonderful institution that many times was very quiet about itself. It seems like sometimes, and maybe it's a sense of pride, that you don't have to say things about the institution and about the wonderful people who have served this institution for so many years, that maybe we have a humility about us that permeates itself into this institution. This institution has so much to be proud of. We have so many firsts. We've accomplished so much, and sometimes with so little, mainly because of the people who have dedicated their lives in working here. It always makes me feel very proud when I'm at one of our pinning ceremonies, which we do 4 times a year, where we commemorate 10, 15, 20, 25, 35 years of service to this institution. And it was in that setting where I felt we needed a permanent recognition for those who had given their professional lives to make this such a great institution. And I'm exceptionally pleased today that this Memorial Plaza, which is really your plaza, it was built with your dollars, with your love, and with your care. that we'll have the opportunity to really celebrate in a very positive way those persons who have passed on and gave so many years of service to this institution. It is a day of celebration. It's celebrating them and celebrating all that they have done in their lifetime. And many of us have a brick waiting for us. And I hope that it's a long time before we cash that brick in. But at least we know that that brick is there, and that someone in the future will celebrate what we have done, what you have done, to continue the tradition of making this a great university. Now, in keeping with the emphasis on discovering and appreciating the rich heritage of the university, we have asked Don Flatt, appropriately so, the author of A Light to the Mountains, to really offer today our dedicatory remarks. I'm pleased to present Dr. Don Flatt, Professor Emeritus of History and a minister of the Church of Christ. Don Flatt.
Thank you very much. 110 years ago, shortly after the last gunshots of the worst feud in American history died down on Morehead's Railroad Street, almost within sight of where we now stand, a brave woman and her young son got off the train to establish Morehead Normal School. 35 years later, at spring commencement 1922, an aura of sadness filled the air with the singing of the school's alma mater, which reflected not only the usual sadness of the closing of a school year, but also the somber farewell to an institution that was fast fading away. However, the school was quickly resurrected in the fall of 1923 when Morehead State Normal School opened its doors. We meet here today to celebrate the life of Morehead State University by remembering those who've given their time and talents to make this institution a light to the mountains by opening doors of opportunity to more than 40,000 alumni and to countless other students. On this occasion, we will sound out the names of 138 individuals later, and of these, 8 of them gave 40 or more years to this institution, including Dr. Warren C. Lappin, 50 years, George T. Young, 47, Marguerite Bishop and Virginia Caudle, 46 years, Naoma Claypool and Henry Hagen, 41 years, and Anna Carter and Lorraine Day, 40 years. Marguerite didn't have very far to walk from the place where she was born, across the street on the corner of what is today the location of the Adrian Doran University Center. And Anna Carter began her stint as secretary to 7 presidents by working for President Frank C. Button in a small office in Burgess Hall in the building in front of me here now. The Burgess Hall was located where the Johnson Camden Library at that time was standing and would be later. The list of honorees will continue to grow as individuals sponsor the names of others who worked here. For example, we just received a letter from the widow of Ralph Hudson in Huntsville, Alabama, telling us that the former art professor died a few weeks ago. Hudson braved the rigors of a tiny biplane in 1934 to take the first official photo of Morehead State's campus, while history professor A.Y. Lloyd secured him by clinging to his belt. The pilot used a cow pasture just outside Morehead as his airport. What a beautiful spot this was. Phoebe and Frank C. Button were living in a house on the back corner of the lot where the Adrian Doran University Center is located when little Annie Page enrolled that first morning in October 1887. Within a few years, 4 buildings were erected within a few yards from where we now stand. In front of me and to my left stood Withers Hall, a boys' dormitory. Slightly to my right was Hargis Hall, the first classroom building. A few yards to my right was Hudson Hall, the girls' dormitory. And located up on the hill was Burgess Hall, the only brick structure of the group. An outside basketball court and tennis courts also dotted the landscape. Subsequently, a tall smokestack was built across the street behind me a few yards away. And then a new heating plant was added in 1937 down on the bypass. A turnstile in front of Burgess Hall and another one in front of the girls' dormitory either restricted or provided entrance to the old normal school. A well at the far corner of what is now Allie Young Hall furnished water for the entire campus. A Judeo-Christian story suggests that the very first two children on this earth had a falling out. Cain then murdered his brother Abel. And many years later, someone said that Abel, being dead, yet speaketh. Of these 138 former personnel of Morehead State, and many others whose names will be added, we now say, they being dead, yet speak. So take a stroll with me around this campus and imagine its scenes, its sounds, and its dreams down through the years. Having spent 7 years of my life in researching and writing about Morehead State, I can almost hear what was going on in the distant past as I walk across the hallowed soil around us. During those early years, we see the boys and girls of the elementary and high school lining up back there to march into Burgess Hall for daily chapel. And while Brother Button, as everybody called him, whether they were members of the Christian church or not, was leader, it was easy to tell when he was preparing to deliver an address, because he left the president's home, consisting of 2 small rooms and a bath in Burgess Hall, and meandered up the hillside into the woods to a cabin where he tried out his message on the birds and the squirrels before coming down to deliver the same to students and to the church. In the evenings, young men and young women came to the well at the far end of what is now Allie Young Hall to draw up water and watch the sun set over the hills. With their rural backgrounds, they felt very much at home in this pastoral scene as they heard the bawling of cows, the squealing of pigs, and the cackling of hens on little lots behind residences between here and Main Street. It would be interesting to know how many youngsters used what they call the courting spot at the well to meet or to spark their beloved. Such precious memories of youth left little doubt about where their children would go to get an education. Prestonsburg attorney W.S. Wallen, who previously sided with Paintsville as the proper location for this state school, changed his mind in the autumn of 1922 after walking across this beautiful hillside and peering down into the valley below. A few days later, he broke the 4-4 tie of the 8-person commission by voting in favor of Morehead over Paintsville. When asked why he changed his vote, he claimed that he saw the light when a feeling rushed over him that God intended that this be the very spot on which the school would be located. His explanation prompted the Louisville Courier-Journal's editorial the following day that the voice heard by Wallen was that of Allie Young rather than God. It was said that whereas Mohammedans had their Allah, Moreheadians had their Ali, who almost single-handedly determined that MSU, not PSU, would see the 21st century dawn to serve the needs of the hills and valleys of eastern Kentucky. On opening day in 1923, a carnival atmosphere engulfed the spot as car, train, wagon, buggy, and horseback brought over 5,000 people to the campus. There were enough beeves and sheep roasted in open pits and great kettles of burgoo over to my right to provide lunch for everybody that day. An even greater problem than food was preventing horses from being hitched on campus, where they might make it more difficult to walk around without soiling one's shoes. There were wonderful maypole dances in front of Alley Young back in the 1930s. The street in front of us was divided with a green strip of grass down the middle of the boulevard. The unforgettable day came when they had the nerve to tear down old Burgess Hall with all its memories. They brought mules right up through here to do the groundbreaking for what we today call Camden Carroll Library. Those were the days when students coming out of the auditorium to my left and heading towards the administration building, Raider Hall it's called today, had to decide in front of Fields Hall, where the walk abruptly ended, whether to walk on the grass or go down to the boulevard and take the sidewalk back to the administration building. Speaking of the auditorium, there was that day when a young speech and drama teacher named Lucille had the nerve to get right up on stage and challenge the president, whom she claimed had been taking money away from her program and using it to build up his football team to put Morehead State on the map. That brave young lady caused such a fuss that she then prevailed upon her sister Louise, physical education teacher, to leave town with her and head out for Lexington for the weekend while the furor died down. And 2 decades after Brother Button's death, 82 white-haired graduates of the old Morehead Normal School renewed attempts to perpetuate the memory of their beloved leader by getting a building named after him. Standing over there at the courting spot in 1953, George Johnson, one of the first students to enroll in the old Normal School and father of Coach Ellis Johnson, extolled Button's gentle character, holding the American flag and pointing toward the skies as tears trickled down his cheeks. Johnson exclaimed, "Up there in heaven is Brother Button, looking down on us with a smile on his face." Local newspaper editor W.E. Snooks Crutcher was moved sufficiently to throw the support of the Rowan County News behind this effort in an editorial stating that it's about time that a building is named after our first president. One evening during the Vietnam War, we were standing right here as demonstrators carried a coffin right down the boulevard and went over to the steps of Button Auditorium, where they ran into, of all people, President Adrian Doran, who had oft given his bus going east, bus going west speech. On this evening, however, he pointed out that he couldn't do a thing about what's going on in Southeast Asia. He then led the marchers in asking the great God above to do something. Doran's famous bus got loose one day in the mid-50s and changed directions to head down south. At the opening convocation of the fall semester 1957, President Doran introduced the first 3 African Americans to attend Morehead State during a regular school year and informed the student body, if you don't feel comfortable in going to school with these 3, you're invited to drop out of Morehead State and find you a school further south. These and other African Americans have honored both Morehead State and themselves by attaining such positions as head surgeon of the medical center at the University of Kansas, news anchor for the largest CBS affiliate in America, reporter for the New York Times, a news editor for the Minneapolis Tribune, member of the most prestigious law firm in Cincinnati, and various other noteworthy positions helping society. With this institution having this kind of story to tell, you can see why a historian would feel so indebted to President Ronald G. Eaglin and First Lady Bonnie for leading a drive to preserve our heritage. And the beauty of the Memorial Plaza, which we dedicate today, represents an incredible comeback from the devastation wrought by a May 1995 tornado, which uprooted dozens of stately old trees in this area of the campus. One of the various items placed in the time capsule a few minutes ago was an autographed copy of A Light to the Mountains, addressed to the class of 2022. As we look to the past today, may each of us pledge total dedication to this beloved institution during the next 25 years, that its light to the mountains may be shining brighter then than ever before. As we close this service today, may we, if we choose, bow our heads as I read a favorite poem of mine, written a few decades ago or a few decades even before this institution was born, by a Quaker poet named John Greenleaf Whittier. Let us bow. Dear Lord and Father of mankind, forgive our foolish ways. Reclothe us in our rightful mind, in purer lives thy service find, in deeper reverence praise. Drop thy still dews of quietness, till all our striving cease. Take from our souls the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives confess the beauty of thy peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Flatt. Nearly half of the first group of memorial bricks have been installed, and you can see them on the inner ring here around the time capsule. The rest will be placed in the near future as weather permits, and you can see many of them up on the table in front of me. There are, I think Keith told me, 1,170 spaces. Is that correct? So we're not going to run out of space. And who knows, 25 years from now. I plan to be here. Everybody else want to be here 25 years from now? Adrian, you're going to be here 25 years from now? Yes, sir. I know. You're going to probably drive here, aren't you? No, it'll be a date that I look forward to coming back to, and if the good Lord's willing, Bonnie and I will both be back up here. At this time, I will ask Keith Capus and Bill Redwine to conduct the first memorial brick ceremony.
Tolling bells have been used for centuries to signify a period of remembrance for a deceased person. Today, the bells will toll in memory of each person whose name is read aloud. We will do this in alphabetical order. We will ask that you show respect for these individuals by talking in whispers if that's necessary, and if you have to leave this area, please do so quietly. Brian Hutchinson is our carillonneur up in the control center in the library. Brian, are we ready? Okay, we are ready. Paul H. Adams, 1951, 1958. Homer Kenny Adkins, 1969, 1996. Mary Lynn Albers, 1969, 1976. Janet Allen, 1985, 1988. Mary T. Anderson, 1937, 1968. Dr. Charles Appel, 1948, 1962. President Harvey A. Babb, 1935, 1940. President William J. Baird, 1946, 1951. Gabriel C. Banks, 1936, 1962. Mabel W. Barber, 1960-1975. Dr. Lewis Barnes, 1963-1981. Major Bob Bell, 1979-1983. Dr. Thelma Bell, 1964-1975. Marguerite Bishop, 1925-1971. James G. Black, 1929-1952. Patty Boland, 1940-1971. William E. Bradley, 1936-1950. Catherine Braun, 1923-1957. George R. Burgess, 1964-1985. President Frank C. Button, 1887, 1892, 1896, 1911, 1922, 1929. Phoebe Button, 1887, 1892. Herman C. Butts, 1964, 1990. Dr. Henry A. Carey, 1945, 1962. Nell Carr, 1966, 1976. Anna Carter, 1923, 1963. Lucille M. Catlett, 1930, 1943. Ora V. Caudle, 1973, 1984. Rebecca Thompson Caudle, 1929, 1950. Thelma Caudle, 1959, 1974. Virginia Caudle, 1945, 1991. William M. Caudle, 1948, 1957. Chapman, 1946-1970. Dr. Robert Charles, 1971-1983. Naomi Claypool, 1925-1966. Mona Combs, 1959-1964. Dorothy B. Conley, 1959-1991. Alex D. Conyers, 1958-1989. Lake C. Cooper, 1956-1988. Alice E. Cox, 1948-1969. Debbie L. Crawford, 1974-1996. Ruth Davis, 1980-1993. Laureen S. Day, 1930-1970. Jimmy D. Hart, 1966-1992. George D. Downing, 1924-1935. Margaret Peggy Dunlap, 1960-1968. Dr. Wilhelm Axelbert, 1948-1971. Linus A. Fair, 1932-1971. Dr. William R. Falls, 1961-1989. Dr. Helen Fulbright, 1961-1977. Marvin George, 1931-1943. Octavia Graves, 1946-1972. Dr. Lawrence E. Griesinger, Jr., 1965, 1996. Dr. Betty Gurley, 1969, 1990. Henry Hagan, 1923, 1964. Merville Hall, 1964, 1977. Dr. Palmer Hall, 1957, 1975. Steve A. Hamilton, 1976, 1997. Harlan Ham, 1965, 1995. Dr. William Hampton, 1959, 1984. Dr. Rondell D. Hart, 1958, 1984. Dr. Robert Hawkins, 1967, 1981. Dr. Margaret Heaslip, 1955, 1983. Dr. Edmund Hicks, 1966, 1980. Kenneth E. Hoffman, 1968, 1984. Herbert Hogan, 1945, 1968. Gary Hoover, 1969, 71, 1978, 80. Ann Howerton, 1989, 1991. Gregory Huddleston, 1989, 1993. Keith Huffman, 1947, 1977. Martin Huffman, 1967, 1993. Inez Faith Humphrey, 1916, 1952. Dr. Creighton Jackson, 1963, 1971. W.L. Jane, 1924-1930. Ellis T. Johnson, 1936-1953. Elaine Kirk, 1964-1979. Russell Kirk, 1964-1977. Catherine Kolar, 1980-1983. Dr. Warren C. Lappin, 1919, 1922, 1924, 1971. Robert G. Laughlin, 1935, 1973. Ina M. Lowe, 1968, 1988. Dr. Edward Luke, 1956-60, 1969-1986. Sue Luke, 1969-1986. William J. Mack, 1957-1979. Hildreth Maggard, 1954-1968. William R. Mahaney, 1963-1992. Jesse R. Mangrum, 1968-1988. Dr. Eugene Martin, 1964-1986. Elizabeth Mayo, 1959-1972. Jesse T. Mays, 1933-1968. Alvin Mack McGarry, 1962-1972. Lynn Miller, 1936-1945. Juanita Minish, 1930-1965. Amy Irene Moore, 1932-1962. Ethel J. Moore, 1955-1972. Gladys A. Hyatt Morehouse, 1966-1979. Dr. William Mosley, 1992-1994. Dr. Otis Murphy, 1968-1978. Edna Neal, 1929-1950. Dr. Robert Needham, 1961-1987. Dr. Robert Newton, 1963-1992. Dr. Paul Overstreet, 1946-1962. Floyd D. Patton, 1967-1983. Darlene Payne, 1969-1988. President John Howard Payne, 1929-1935. Dr. Clifford Rader, 1947-1964. Stanley Rajunas, 1946-1953. Donna P. Ramey, 1969-1997. Dr. Richard M. Reeser, 1967-1979. Virginia Rice, 1947-1969. William Rogers, 1982-1993. Erlene Saunders, 1958-1966. Lee Scruggs, 1963-1975. Dr. William Simpson, 1965-1972. Ira Mae Smelly, 1948, 1968. Ray P. Smith, 1983, 1997. President Charles R. Spain, 1951, 1954. Dr. Lawrence Stewart, 1958, 1970. Robert W. Stokes, 1949, 1986. Maurice Strider, 1966, 1979. Dr. Norman Tant, 1952, 1977. Lonnie Thornsberry, 1972, 1975. Dr. Nona B. Triplett, 1968, 1973. Mildred C. Tucker, 1958, 1982. President William H. Vaughn, 1928, 1946. Victor Vinatazzi, 1960, 1987. Dr. Zell Walter, 1948, 1966. Blanche Waltz, 1953, 1969. Julia D. Webb, 1964, 1973. Mary Ella Wells, 1956, 1983. Hazel H. Whitaker, 1950, 1976. Beulah Witt, 1973, 1992. Monroe Wicker, 1947, 1971. Ella O. Wilkes, 1932, 1962. June Jameson Williams, 1969-1989. Leela Rose Wilson, 1962-1976. Roger L. Wilson, 1953-1976. George T. Young, 1932-1979. Thomas D. Young, 1936-1964. That concludes our ceremony. Thank you. President?
I want to remind you all, those of you who are coming to the luncheon and of course the convocation at 2 o'clock today when Governor Patton will be here. Our goal is to keep this a very beautiful place. I know all of you will help us do that. Thank you for your attendance.